2015 has not only given us the 7th entry into the Star Wars saga, but also the 7th entry into the Rocky saga, as over the Thanksgiving weekend, I went to go see Creed, and here are my thoughts. Hey, Super Tubers, don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and spread the word about the channel, and find me on these social media platforms. Ryan Coogler writes and directs Creed, starring Michael B. Jordan as Adonis Johnson Creed, the illegitimate son of Apollo Creed from Rockies 1, 2, 3, and 4, the legendary world champion, and of course Sylvester Stallone reprising his role as Rocky Balboa, the main protagonist of the first 6 films. In this movie, Rocky pretty much takes the Mick role, and Adonis Creed pretty much takes the Rocky role. And as you can tell by the trailers, the film is about Adonis Creed, Apollo Creed's son, coming to terms with his identity and finding and seeking out Rocky to help him train to become a professional fighter. This was an unbelievable movie. I'm going to try my best to stay away from spoilers as best I can. I'll just give my thoughts on it. What an incredible film this was. Legit, I went into this film, and you don't have to be a Rocky fan to like this movie, but I would highly advise you to watch the first 6 Rocky films because the movie is loaded with references to all 6 previous Rocky movies. They're all over the place. In fact, there's a big unanswered question from the end of Rocky III that actually gets answered in this film. And I thought it was fantastic. It's got material for both the casual and for the hardcore Rocky fan. But what an incredible, inspiring, emotional film. I mean, I damn near was in tears about 3 times during this movie. The story pretty much follows the life of Adonis Johnson, who grew up pretty much going from foster home to foster home because of his troubled anger management issues. And then he discovers that he is indeed Apollo Creed's son. Apollo Creed, of course, the legendary world champion who battled Rocky in the first 2 Rocky films and then soon after became one of his best friends. Of course, he was killed in the ring by Ivan Drago in Rocky IV. So this film pretty much tells the story of his son, who initially wants to become a boxer because he has good hands, he's always been a good fighter, and deep down inside knows that it runs through his blood. And that's one thing he has to come to terms with in the film. A lot like Goku, believe it or not. Very much like Goku, in fact. And throughout the film, he disguises his real last name, being the son of Creed, because he wants to make it on his own, until later on in the film, the character arc, of course, comes when he comes to terms with the fact that he is Apollo Creed's son. And there's a line near the end of the movie, which it's not really a spoiler, but it's an amazing line that will move you, when Rocky tells him, you know, why do you do this or whatever. I forget the actual what the context was, but I remember he was just asking him a question. And Adonis says, because I want to prove that I wasn't an accident, which is, wow, just an unbelievable film. Just an unbelievable film. Michael B. Jordan, people have been talking about this guy for a while. He's got a tremendous amount of talent. He plays that tough guy role very well, but his facials and his acting ability can actually work very effectively when it comes to displaying emotional scenes. Of course, in this film, like Rocky, he has a love interest, which is played by Tessa Thompson. Her name is Bianca. She's a musician. He finds out during the film that she has hearing problems that are actually getting worse, and at some point in her life, she may end up deaf. And he pretty much tells her that she's an inspiration to him. And it's a very moving scene because she's all like thinking it's a bad thing, and he flips it on her and tells him that it's a good thing. And that's always good when you have somebody who's, an inspiration. Of course, Phylicia Rashad plays his mom, and those of you who remember her from The Cosby Show, yes, indeed, she's in there. Another fantastic performance. She pretty much plays this, caring and concerned mother who's hurt because of the fact that Creed died, Apollo Creed, and is worried about the same thing happening to Adonis. But the movie pretty much follows a double kind of story arc for both Adonis and for Rocky. Of course, we last left Rocky. He was running his restaurant. He had just went one-on-one with Antonio Tarver and Rocky Balboa, a.k.a. Rocky VI. And they pretty much they cross paths, and Adonis reveals who he is. And at first, Rocky does not want to train him, but he's inspired to. And then, as many of you saw in the trailer, it's extremely tragic because Rocky does get sick in this movie. I'm not going to reveal what happens. And he has this monologue where he talks about how he would give everything up to spend one more day with Adrian. Man, that shit hurt. I mean, anybody who's ever lost someone can relate. And Sly, what a performance by Sylvester Stallone. People have said it's a career performance. I would say it is one of his best performances ever. This is his best performance of Rocky, of the character of Rocky, in any film since probably the first one. Just amazing, amazing. And then, of course, he wants to kind of give up. And part of him just wants to die so he can be with Rocky and with Mickey and with Apollo and everybody who's died. But the inspiration from Adonis Creed to fight, is what brings him back. And it's amazing because the film is basically a remake of both Rocky I and Rocky V. Adonis Creed to nobody gets a shot against Pretty Ricky Conlon, played by Tony Bellew, who's a real boxer. And also Danny Stuntman Wheeler's in this is played by Andre Ward, who's the guy who he was supposed to fight, but got dropped out due to a broken jaw during a press conference. But it's interesting to me that they have Andre Ward and Tony Bellew, real-life fighters, playing fighters in the film, following Antonio Tarver and, of course, Tommy Morrison's footsteps. I do find it funny that Ivan Drago was the last, actor, to portray a fighter. Now they have fighters portraying fighters, but nonetheless, the film really does take the Rocky V approach where Rocky's beat up, he's sick, and he wants to continue his legacy by training someone else. That plot is still here. So it is very much like Rocky V, except it's Rocky V done right. But of course, Rocky I elements are there because Pretty Ricky gives an unknown fighter a chance at the championship or a chance at stardom, which is, of course, Adonis Creed, purely based on the fact that it was his name. Obviously in Rocky I, there were different circumstances as to why Apollo gave an unknown a chance at the title. But in this movie, the entire idea was it was going to be a guy who was the bloodline of the greatest fighter of all time, really. And that's kind of what the story of the film kind of pushes, is that it really is like a 2.5-hour love fest to Carl Weathers and his character of Apollo Creed. They pretty much say that Apollo Creed was the greatest champion of all time. And there's even a scene when when Adonis asks Rocky, why did Apollo lose? And Rocky says, because time. He pretty much said that Apollo got old. And that happens to a lot of great fighters. That happens all the time. All the time. And not just fighters, but, look at other sports. It happens all the time. And really the film kind of does like a double story for Michael B. Jordan's character of Adonis Creed, in that he's looking for closure about who his father was, while also trying to carve his own identity at the same time, trying to make his father proud. From beyond the grave. And it's amazing. The soundtrack of the film is incredible. There's tons of great hip-hop tracks from The Roots and from Nas, and just incredible stuff, just moving stuff that I love. And they also have the classic Rocky. I'm not entirely sure if Bill Conti scored the film. I would have to look and see. According to what I see here, it's Ludwig Göransson who scored the film. Did a fantastic job. We have, of course, the training montages that made Rocky famous. They do appear here. But they didn't have the classic Rocky music, which kind of threw me off until they were saving it for the right moment, which really was amazing. When they played that, I'm not going to spoil it, but when they played the classic Rocky music during the climax of the movie, again, Niagara Falls. The movie really tugs on the heartstrings because of the way that, when you watch the film, if you really learn, especially if you grew up with Rocky, like I did, if you grew up watching these movies, you really care about this character and you see the shit he has to go through, and then you start to slowly care more about Adonis. Even though he's a troubled young man, you care more about him, and you really see how much he loves Rocky as their relationship builds. And will there be a sequel? Well, there are some unanswered questions and unfinished business, of course. Pretty Ricky is going to be doing some jail time, much like a lot of real boxers do after this film. So the villain for the next Creed, if they do one, and if it makes money, they will, is probably going to be Andre Ward's stuntman Wheeler, who was supposed to challenge originally Pretty Ricky, but of course the fight didn't happen. That allowed Adonis to step in. But amazing movie. It just really tugs at your heartstrings. It's never boring. It's entertaining. The characters, the actors all have great charisma. If you haven't seen Creed, go see it. If you've never seen a Rocky film before and you have time, go ahead and marathon the first 6 Rocky movies. I'm not a huge fan of 4 and 5. Big reason why I don't like 4 is because Apollo dies, but I guess you have to kind of see Apollo die before you see this movie. But again, you really don't have to understand this film and to have it give you an impact. So that's my review for Creed. Amazing film. Go out and see it right now, and I will catch you down the road.